Title, owner, not intruder, but only neighbors knew. Part 1, Home Interrupted. It was a perfect Saturday, the kind of day that smelled like cut grass, grilled ribs, and the faint buzz of a neighbor's playlist drifting over wooden fences. In the heart of suburban Atlanta, Marcus Wright pulled into his driveway with a bag of groceries in the passenger seat and peace on his mind. His house, a modest but well-kept craftsman with sky blue shutters and a wraparound porch, stood as both sanctuary and symbol. It was his, paid for in full, earned over years of late nights and freelance design jobs. He had built it up room by room after inheriting it from his grandmother, and he loved it. Marcus Wright, 34, black, graphic designer, homeowner. He was the kind of man who tipped well, smiled often, and paid his property taxes early. Not because he had to, but because he believed in showing up right. He kept his lawn trimmed, waved at every dog walker, helped his elderly neighbors with trash day. He wasn't trying to prove anything, but he understood what it meant to be watched, even in peace, especially in a neighborhood that still whispered behind curtains. He pulled into his driveway, popped the trunk, and grabbed his groceries. As he stepped onto the porch, he realized he'd left his keys inside the house. Not a problem. He knew the back door was unlocked, but instead of walking around, he set the groceries down and used the small lockbox hidden behind the porch column, the one he rarely used but kept just in case. He crouched, entered the code, and retrieved the spare key. As he stood up, key in hand, he heard it. The crunch of tires, the whoop of a police siren. A white patrol cruiser pulled up fast and stopped at the curb. Marcus looked up, confused, still holding the key in midair. Out stepped Officer Daniel Cook, white, mid-40s, sunglasses, hand already hovering near his holster. "Hey," the officer barked, "step away from the door." Marcus blinked. "I live here," he said calmly, gesturing toward the groceries. "I just locked myself out." "Sure you do," Officer Cook replied, stepping closer. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Marcus's heart started to race. "I'm opening my front door," Marcus said slowly, holding the key up like a badge. "There's nothing illegal happening here." Cook didn't flinch. "What's your name?" "Marcus Wright. I can show you ID inside." "That's not how this works," the officer snapped. "You're going to sit on that porch while I verify everything." Marcus exhaled, tension rising in his chest. He sat down slowly on his own porch, in his own yard, under suspicion, for entering his own home. Within minutes, another cruiser arrived, then a third. Neighbors began to peek through windows, some stepping outside with phones already recording. A woman from across the street, Mrs. Lopez, Latina, retired teacher, walked toward the sidewalk, frowning. "He lives there," she called to the officers. "That's Marcus. He's been here for years." "Ma'am, please return to your property," one officer said sharply. "No," she replied, firmer. "I won't." Marcus kept his hands on his knees, trying to stay calm. "I can give you my license," he said again. "It's just inside." "You stay seated," Officer Cook growled. Moments later, Cook radioed in Marcus's name, suspiciously spelled it wrong twice, and seemed irritated when dispatch confirmed Marcus had no record. Then he asked, "What are you doing here today?" Marcus looked up, incredulous. "I live here. What are you doing here?" Another neighbor, Jerome, a white man in his 50s, walked over holding his phone. He turned to Marcus and said loudly, "Marcus, you want me to call your sister?" Marcus nodded. "Please." Jerome turned to the officers. "I've known this man for 6 years. He helped me renovate my kitchen. You're embarrassing yourselves." Mrs. Lopez chimed in. "And you're making the rest of us look like racists just because you don't know how to knock on a door." The tension cracked. Officer Cook took a half step back. Finally, Marcus was allowed to retrieve his license. Under escort, he handed it over. The name matched. The address matched. The officer stared at the card for a long moment, as if reality offended him, then mumbled, "You can go." Marcus stared at him. "Go? You mean go inside my house?" No response. Just the slow retreat of the officers, leaving behind flashing lights, cell phone footage, and neighbors who would never forget. Marcus sat on his porch long after sunset. No appetite, groceries still on the counter, just him and the echo of what had happened. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He just sat, trying to remind himself that he had done everything right. And still, it hadn't mattered. Jerome sent the video to a local reporter. Mrs. Lopez posted it online with a caption. "This is what it means to be black and suspicious in your own neighborhood. His name is Marcus. He belongs here." By midnight, it had over 80,000 views and rising. Part 2, when the neighborhood speaks, by Sunday morning, Marcus's name was everywhere. Not by his choice, but because his neighbors had chosen to speak up, loudly, clearly, and unapologetically. The video of the incident now had over 300,000 views with hashtags trending. Nuanturier, he lives there. Blackwell home. Punenum, Shurduwaru justice for Marcus. But Marcus wasn't celebrating. He was still processing. His sister Tasha called from Charlotte. "I just saw the video. You okay?" He hesitated. "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're quiet. That's how I know something's wrong." He finally spoke. "I sat on my own porch like a suspect, Tasha. They didn't see me. Just a black man with a key." Her voice cracked. "You want me to come down there?" "No, but I might need you later." Aberdeenham. That afternoon, a local reporter, Camille Davis, showed up on Marcus's street. She knocked politely. He almost didn't answer, but she didn't push. Just left a card and said softly, "If you want to tell your story on your terms, I'm listening." Her approach felt different. Marcus kept the card. Meanwhile, the police department issued a statement. "We are aware of the incident involving Officer Daniel Cook. The department is reviewing the body cam footage and protocols followed. We are committed to transparency and community safety." But Marcus's neighbors weren't satisfied, and neither was the public, especially when it leaked that Officer Cook had multiple prior complaints of aggressive behavior during stops involving Black and Latino residents. Monday evening, the neighborhood HOA held an emergency meeting. Dozens gathered in the community center. Jerome stood first. "This isn't about misunderstanding. It's about bias. And it happened on our street." Mrs. Lopez added, "If Marcus can't walk into his house without police pulling up, then none of us are safe. Don't think your silence protects you." Some residents looked uncomfortable. Others nodded. Marcus wasn't there, but his story was the only thing in the room. On Tuesday, Marcus called Camille, the reporter. "Can we talk?" he asked. They met at a local park. No cameras, no mic, just a notebook and honesty. She asked, "What do you want people to understand?" He replied, "That this isn't rare, that I shouldn't need white neighbors to vouch for my humanity, and that what happened to me happens quietly every day to people who don't have a porch full of witnesses." She published the article the next morning. It went national. Facing growing outrage, the police department announced that Officer Cook had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Community leaders demanded an independent inquiry. The mayor issued a statement. No resident should feel unsafe entering their own home. Full stop. It was the first time Marcus felt the city say something without dodging the truth. That evening, a stranger knocked. A middle-aged black man, soft-spoken, in a crisp suit. "I'm Reverend Langston. I run a community advocacy group." Marcus nodded. "I've heard of you." Langston continued, "We're organizing a forum, not just for you, but for everyone who's ever had their dignity questioned by a badge. We'd like you to speak." Marcus paused. "I'm not an activist." "No," Langston said. "You're a neighbor, and that's where change begins." That night, Marcus sat on the same porch where it all happened. Same view, same swing, but everything felt different. He pulled out a notebook, and for the first time since the incident, he wrote, "I never wanted to be a symbol, but maybe I can be a start." He remembered moving into the house 3 years ago, the keys in hand, the smile on his face, the dream his grandmother had given him. He hadn't built this home just for himself. He'd built it to belong, and he still did, no matter what anyone else thought. Part 3, A Voice Becomes a Movement. The community forum was packed. Folding chairs filled the rec center, bodies pressed shoulder to shoulder. Neighbors, reporters, clergy, students, activists, all there for one reason: Marcus Wright. The man who simply tried to unlock his own door, now standing at a podium. Voice steady, eyes tired but clear. He wasn't a speaker. He wasn't trained in rhetoric or politics. But truth didn't need polish. It just needed presence. I never asked for attention. I wasn't trying to start a movement. But if it takes my name for people to believe this still happens, then okay. I'll say it again. I live here. And that should have been enough. The room held its breath. What if my neighbor hadn't been watching? What if no one believed me? What if I had said the wrong thing or moved too fast? Would we be having this conversation, or would you be saying my name at a vigil? Silence. Then thunderous applause. Within days, local organizations mobilized. A petition demanding a full independent investigation into Officer Cook gathered over 25,000 signatures. A voter registration drive launched in the same park Marcus met the reporter. A neighborhood initiative called Porch Talks began, encouraging open dialogue about race and bias. People weren't just angry anymore. They were activated, but with momentum came resistance. Comment sections turned ugly. You should have complied faster. Why do you people always make everything about race? Cops have a hard job too. Marcus stayed offline, but the noise found its way to his inbox. One message read, "You're not a hero. You're a troublemaker looking for a payout." Marcus stared at it, then hit delete. A leaked internal memo revealed that Officer Cook had hired an attorney and intended to fight any disciplinary action. In a brief interview outside his home, he said, "I responded to what I thought was suspicious behavior. I followed protocol. That's my job." He didn't apologize, didn't say Marcus's name, just protocol. Marcus read the quote over breakfast and shook his head. At his design firm, leadership held a private meeting. They offered Marcus paid time off. "We want to support you," his manager said. Marcus declined. "I don't want a break. I want normal." But they made one more offer. "How would you feel about designing a community awareness campaign around this?" His fingers tingled. Not from pressure, from purpose. He nodded. "Let's do it." He called it My House Too. Simple, powerful, billboards, posters, digital ads, social videos. Each featured photos of Black and brown homeowners standing in front of their homes. Tagline, "We belong here, always have." The campaign spread fast. Cities picked it up. Celebrities reshared it. Marcus's design, his voice, had reached millions. Weeks later, Marcus was invited to speak at the city's Police Accountability Commission. He sat across from 5 uniformed board members. One asked, "Mr. Wright, what outcome are you seeking?" He paused, then said, "I want policy that stops this before it starts. Not just for me, for the next person unlocking their door." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts were loud enough. That evening, Marcus sat on the porch again, this time with Jerome and Mrs. Lopez. No cameras, just 3 neighbors and a cooler of lemonade. Jerome raised a glass. To not being quiet anymore. Mrs. Lopez added, to watching out for each other. Marcus smiled. To home. Camille, the reporter, called again. "I've been offered a documentary deal," she said. "I want to center it around the power of neighbor witness. Not just you, all of you." Marcus hesitated, then asked, "If I say yes, can I help shape the story?" She grinned. "You are the story." Before bed, Marcus pulled out the notebook again. He wrote, "I'm not just the man on the porch. I'm the man who stayed, and now people are standing with me." He looked around his living room, the one he painted himself, furnished himself, fought to keep safe. It was still his. Always had been. Part 4. More than a hashtag. 2 months had passed since the incident, but to Marcus it still felt like yesterday. The sirens, the spotlight, the porch. Only now there was something new, the weight of being seen. His inbox was full of requests, interviews, speaking engagements, partnerships, podcasts, a book agent. Everyone wanted a piece of his story, but not all for the right reasons. One email read, "We're producing a true crime docu-series. Would love to include your story in an episode about neighborhood policing gone wrong." He stared at the subject line. When home becomes a crime scene. He deleted it. Tasha, his sister, came to visit. She watched him sit on the porch one evening, shoulders lower than usual. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, but she didn't buy it. "You're allowed to take a break, Marcus. I don't want to lose momentum." "You won't, but you'll lose yourself if you don't rest." He didn't argue, because she was right. The department released an official update. Officer Cook is under active internal investigation for violation of conduct and racial profiling allegations. A third-party panel has been assigned. They requested a formal interview with Marcus. He agreed, but on one condition: it would be recorded. The investigator nodded. Of course. In a sterile office downtown, Marcus sat across from a panel of 4. They asked, "Why do you think the officer approached you that way? Have you ever had prior contact with Officer Cook? Do you believe race played a role in the interaction?" Marcus stayed calm. "I didn't break a law. I wasn't aggressive. I used a key to open my own door. But I wasn't seen as a neighbor. I was seen as a threat." "You tell me what that sounds like." The room was quiet. Too quiet. Meanwhile, online trolls found him again. Anonymous messages. Thinly veiled threats. One said, "Watch your back, Marcus. Not everyone's clapping." He reported them, blocked them, but he couldn't unfeel them. One morning, a handwritten letter arrived in the mail. It was from an older white woman named Clara, from Ohio. "I've lived in my house for 52 years. Never once did I worry about someone questioning if I belonged. Watching what happened to you made me realize I've taken that for granted. You changed something in me. Thank you." He smiled, then placed the letter beside Lillian's note from the airline incident, a reminder from another life. Marcus attended a local youth discussion panel hosted by the Porch Talks team. Teens shared stories of being followed in stores, pulled over for matching descriptions, or feeling out of place in classrooms. One 14-year-old boy stood and said, "I used to think being black and safe were two different things, but now I see it's not me that needs to change." Marcus wiped a tear. He walked up after and hugged the kid. "Your voice is stronger than mine ever was at your age. Don't let anyone silence it." The third-party panel released a summary. 6 prior complaints of excessive force, 2 reports of biased language, 4 of those involving Black or Latino men. No suspensions, no meaningful consequences. Until now. The city announced, "Officer Daniel Cook is hereby suspended without pay pending final review. We will be initiating a broader audit of past complaints across the department." It wasn't justice, but it was accountability. A start. He called Camille, the reporter. "I need time," he said. "Not off the record, just off the front page." She understood. "You've done enough for now, Marcus. Go be a man, not a message." That night, Marcus sat outside with a cup of tea. The same porch, the same swing. But something felt different now. Not safer, not perfect, but owned, fully. He pulled out his notebook. Wrote, "They didn't take my house. They didn't take my name. And they'll never take my right to be seen." Part 5. The Man Beyond the Moment. For the first time in weeks, Marcus slept through the night. No phone vibrating on the nightstand. No breaking updates. No reporters waiting. Just silence. Real, deep silence. He didn't realize how much he missed it. He spent more time with family, barbecued with Jerome and his kids, helped Mrs. Lopez repaint her shed, went back to the dog shelter where he used to volunteer before all this started. People greeted him differently now, some with awe, others with guilt. He responded to all of it the same way, with grace, because Marcus never wanted to be famous. He just wanted to be free. Georgetown University reached out. A student-led criminal justice reform group invited him to speak. He hesitated, but after Ava, his mentee from the airline story, texted, "You said we speak even when we're tired," he agreed. Standing on a stage in a lecture hall, Marcus looked out over a crowd of young, diverse faces. He began, "What happened to me wasn't new. It wasn't unique. It was just visible. But the question isn't, how could this happen? The question is, why do we still allow it to?" A student asked, "Do you think things are getting better?" Marcus didn't give a simple answer. Things change when people stay loud after the hashtags disappear, when allyship becomes policy, when silence stops being safer than standing up. Inspired, Ava and a group of pre-law students drafted a local policy proposal called the Right Act, named in Marcus's honor. It included required bias training for all responding officers, a mandate for neighbor verification protocols, a citizen oversight panel with neighborhood representation. The mayor's office agreed to review it. One day, Marcus received an unexpected email. Subject, from someone you don't expect. It was from Officer Cook's daughter. She wrote, "Mr. Wright, I don't speak for my father, but I want you to know, watching your calm, your strength, and how you carried this, it made me see things differently. I used to defend him without thinking. Now I'm thinking more." Marcus read it twice, then again, and smiled. Not for validation, but because change doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. The final decision came through. Officer Daniel Cook was terminated for conduct unbecoming of the department and repeated violation of protocol. Some cheered. Others called it overreaction. But Marcus, he didn't post, didn't celebrate. He just exhaled and whispered, "Finally." He went back to work full-time. Clients welcomed him with open arms. Some asked for quotes, some asked for selfies. But most just said, "Glad to have you back." He started painting again too, something he hadn't done since college. His first new piece? A silhouette of a man on a porch, under a night sky, with stars that spelled one word, home. Titled, "The Porch That Spoke." It aired on public television and quickly caught fire online. It didn't sensationalize. It humanized. Interviews with neighbors, footage of the original incident, and Marcus, quiet, clear, and honest. The final scene showed him watering his plants. No narration, just the sound of birds and peace. One day, a teenage boy rang Marcus's doorbell. Shy, fidgety. He said, "My teacher showed your story in civics class. I live 3 blocks over. I just wanted to say, thank you." Marcus handed him a bottle of water and invited him to sit on the porch swing. They talked for an hour about school, dreams, being seen. Before the boy left, he said, "You made it easier for me to believe I belong here too." Marcus nodded. That was the real win. That night, Marcus opened his notebook again and wrote, "I didn't ask for this storm, but I held my ground. And now maybe others won't have to stand alone." He closed the book, took a deep breath, and walked back inside his house. His house, without fear. Part 6. A name, not a narrative. It was a rainy Tuesday when Marcus's phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Did you see the city council agenda? The Right Act's up for a vote." His chest tightened. He hadn't expected it to move so fast. But maybe that's what happens when truth hits timing. The chamber was full, local news cameras, city officials, ordinary citizens. Ava stood at the podium, presenting the act. She spoke with fire, measured but unshakable. "We are not trying to destroy trust in police. We are trying to build trust where it was never earned." Her words hit hard. When the council called for public comment, dozens lined up, some in support, some against. One man in uniform said, "You're handcuffing officers from doing their jobs." A woman in the back yelled, "We're asking them to do their jobs right." He hadn't planned to speak, but something inside told him, "Go." He approached the mic slowly. The room went quiet. "I never wanted a law named after me. But if my name means someone else won't be asked to prove they belong in their own living room, then I'll wear it." He didn't raise his voice. He just spoke like he was home. The motion passed. 6-1. The Right Act was adopted. The room exploded in applause. Some cried, some hugged. And Marcus? He just sat down and let the moment breathe. Headlines poured in. Right Act passes, bias reform takes root. From victim to visionary, Marcus Wright's journey. City Council passes law named after wrongly accused black man. But this time, Marcus felt something different. Less rage, more fatigue. For the first time, he didn't want to answer every email, didn't want to give another interview, didn't want to be the face. He just wanted to be Marcus. The guy who loved his porch swing and worked in digital branding. Not the man with the law, Marcus had started therapy a few months ago. Quiet sessions, sometimes just silence and breathing. This time he said, I feel like I'm more valuable to people as a moment than as a man. His therapist nodded. The moment mattered, but it didn't create you. You created it because of who you already were. That sat with him. Deep. One afternoon, a group of students from the local high school left something at his door. A framed piece of art, black and white, showing a silhouette unlocking a door with light bursting out. Signed, "Thank you for opening more than just your house." He held the frame to his chest for a long time, then hung it beside his front door. The porch that spoke received a regional Emmy. Camille called to thank Marcus. "I know you didn't want attention, but you gave people something real." He chuckled. "You gave it shape. I just opened the door." His sister Tasha called. "You doing okay?" He sighed. "I'm tired of being seen as a cause." She replied, "You are not a cause. You're a man who stood up and then sat down and then stood up again. That's called being steady, not being a statue." The community program started by Marcus's neighbors expanded to 5 cities. Conversations in driveways, potlucks that turned into panels, discussions that turned into reforms. It wasn't just healing a block, it was rippling. And Marcus never once asked for credit because real impact doesn't need applause. It just needs roots. One night, he picked up his notebook again, wrote, "My name is on a bill, but it's also on a mailbox. I'm not the headline. I'm the guy who still waters his plants, and that, maybe more than anything, is proof I survived this with my soul intact." He closed the journal and exhaled. Part 7. Legacy in Motion. Spring arrived quietly. The trees lining Marcus's block bloomed with pink and white petals. Birds returned to their old songs. The air smelled like rain and barbecue again. And for the first time in a while, Marcus didn't feel watched. He felt present. The Right Act inspired youth councils across the city to start their own proposals. One group, mostly high schoolers, launched an initiative to add civic justice education to middle school curricula. When asked who inspired them, the student spokesperson said, "We saw someone fight for his home without yelling. We thought, maybe we could fight for ours too." The neighborhood's porch talks returned, but this time, without Marcus as the speaker. Instead, he sat among the listeners. He watched as a local mom shared how her son had been profiled at a mall. He listened to a white college student talk about unlearning silence. He didn't interrupt. He didn't guide. He just held space. Because sometimes leadership means letting others take the mic. Mrs. Lopez invited Marcus over for dinner. She made arroz con pollo and insisted on extra portions. "You look thinner," she said, poking his ribs. He laughed. "Just lighter." She nodded. "You passed the torch, but you didn't lose the fire." Marcus received a formal letter from City Hall. "Mr. Wright, we are formally renaming the annual Community Leadership Award after you. Starting this fall, it will be known as the Marcus Wright Impact Award for ordinary citizens who take extraordinary action in the face of injustice." It humbled him, not because of the honor, but because it would outlive his moment. Marcus's father, a quiet man, retired Army, came to visit. They sat on the porch with cold drinks, watching the sun dip below the trees. "I'm proud of you, son," his father said. "I wasn't trying to be a hero. You weren't. That's what makes it real." That night, Marcus reached the final page of his notebook. He wrote slowly, "I never expected the world to bend. I just wanted it to see me, see my neighbors, see that freedom isn't just about laws. It's about belonging without question. And now, maybe we're getting closer." He closed the book, placed it in a drawer, and started a new one. At a local art gallery, a young black painter unveiled a new work, a 3-panel canvas showing a man being stopped on his porch, the same man speaking in front of a crowd, that man planting a tree surrounded by children. The title? "Still Standing," the artist said. "I based it on Marcus Wright, but it's really about all of us." Marcus stood in the back of the room, unannounced, but fully known. Jason, and the high schooler inspired by Marcus, was about to graduate. He sent Marcus a message. "I'd be honored if you came to my ceremony." You're the reason I never stopped dreaming. Marcus replied, wouldn't miss it for the world. The morning of graduation, Marcus stood near the back of the gymnasium, watching rows of caps and gowns move across the stage. When Jason's name was called, the young man looked into the crowd, found Marcus, and smiled. Not the smile of a fan, but of a peer, someone ready to carry the legacy forward. Part 8. Roots and Reach. The applause from Jason's graduation still echoed in Marcus's chest. That afternoon, Jason came up to him, holding his diploma in one hand, a note in the other. I wrote this for you, he said. Not for the ceremony, for everything before it. Marcus unfolded the paper slowly. Inside, Jason had written, you didn't just fight for a house. You made room for all of us to believe we could build one too. Marcus didn't speak. He just hugged him, tightly. The news cycle had moved on. No more interviews, no more headlines. And yet change kept happening. Not because of attention, but because seeds had taken root. The RIGHT Act inspired similar legislation in 2 other cities. Porch talks expanded to 7 states. Young leaders stepped forward. And Marcus? He quietly stepped aside, but remained nearby. Marcus began taking on more creative projects. One client asked him to design a logo for a campaign focused on neighborhood equality. He created a simple, powerful symbol, a house with no walls, only light, and a single word beneath it, belong. The campaign loved it. But Marcus didn't care about approval. He just felt something reignite in him. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was creating again. The principal invited Marcus to speak during Career Week. I'm not a teacher, Marcus said, but you are a lesson, she replied. So he came. 25 kids, all wide-eyed, sat on a colorful rug as Marcus told his story, gently, truthfully, age-appropriately. One little girl raised her hand and asked, were you scared? Marcus nodded. Yeah, but I stood still anyway. The kids clapped, but one boy didn't. He looked confused. Why would they think you don't live in your house? Silence fell. Marcus knelt and answered, because some people still forget that people like me can live anywhere. But that's why we keep reminding them. Camille, the journalist, returned to check in. Not for a story, just for coffee. You know, she said, sipping from a to-go cup, this might be the first time I've seen you without a camera crew. Marcus chuckled. Feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, she nodded. And weirdly, bigger. They didn't need to say it out loud. The movement had grown past both of them. Now and then, letters still arrived. From students, from retired teachers, from community organizers in small towns he'd never visited. All of them saying the same thing in different ways. You made me feel seen. You gave me language I didn't have. You reminded me I don't have to be quiet anymore. He kept each one in a shoebox, not out of vanity, but because some stories deserved to be held. One afternoon, Officer Cook's former partner came by, not in uniform, just a man in his late 40s, eyes tired, voice low. I wanted to say, I should have done more that day. Marcus studied him. I didn't speak up. I told myself it wasn't my job. But watching what followed, the neighborhood, the reforms, the kid who graduated, I realized something. What's that? Marcus asked. The man took a breath. You weren't the problem. Silence was. Marcus nodded slowly, then extended his hand. Thank you for saying that. They shook hands, not as enemies, but as men who'd both grown. Jason called with news. He'd been accepted to multiple colleges, all with strong pre-law or criminal justice programs. But I chose the one with the best community outreach program, he said. Why? Marcus asked. Because I don't want to just study justice. I want to practice it, street by street. Marcus smiled. You're already doing it. That night, Marcus sat on his swing with a cup of mint tea, watching dusk swallow the day. He didn't write. He didn't plan. He just was. And for the first time since that siren first shattered his peace, he felt whole. Not because the world had changed completely, but because he had helped it shift, even if just a little, even if just on his block. And maybe that was always enough. Part 9, The Ripple Keeps Moving. It started with a phone call from out of state. Hi, is this Marcus Wright? A hesitant voice, slightly southern. This is Sarah Lynn. I'm a teacher at a middle school in Kentucky. My students are learning about modern civil rights heroes, and your name came up. Marcus blinked. My name, she continued. Would you be open to doing a virtual Q&A? They don't want to learn from textbooks. They want to learn from you. Altar, the screen filled with rows of tiny faces. Kids of every color, some in school uniforms, some with messy hair and eager eyes. One girl asked, what was it like to be treated like you didn't belong? Marcus paused, then said, it hurt, but it also showed me how important it is to be seen and to see each other. Another student asked, are you still scared it could happen again? Marcus looked right into the webcam. I'm aware, but I'm not scared because now I know I'm not alone. Room. Marcus's block had become a bit of a symbol, not flashy, but steady. A place where porch talks were still held monthly. Kids chalked messages like, we all belong on the sidewalks. The local precinct sent a new liaison officer, a young woman named Officer Tran, who came to every meeting and listened. Real change, slow, imperfect, but real. Now a freshman, Jason came home for spring break and stopped by Marcus's place. They sat on the porch like they always did. Jason looked older, more focused. He pulled out a small leather notebook and handed it to Marcus. It's blank, he said. I thought maybe it was your turn to start a new one. Marcus chuckled. You're gonna make me cry, man. Jason smiled. You taught me to use my voice. Now I want to watch what you do with your quiet. 1 year to the day, since the sirens, the confrontation, the porch, no press, no fanfare. Just Marcus, sitting where it all began, watching the sunrise. He closed his eyes, whispered a quiet thank you to no one in particular, then stood and walked through his front door. This time, with ease, with peace, with purpose. Later that week, he received a letter with no return address. Inside, you don't know me, but I was watching that day from 3 houses down. I didn't say anything. I wanted to, but I froze. I've lived with guilt since, but your grace taught me this. It's never too late to speak up. I'm volunteering now. I've started helping neighbors. I've changed because of you. Marcus folded the letter slowly, added it to the shoebox. The painter who created Still Standing reached out. We're curating a new collection on belonging and boundaries, she said. We want you to contribute something. A word, a phrase, anything. What would your piece say now? Marcus thought about it for a moment, then replied, we live here, not just in buildings, but in each other. That night, he sat down with Jason's blank notebook and began a new entry, this time addressed not to the world, but to himself. Dear Marcus, you didn't ask to be a voice, but you became one, not by shouting, but by standing still, not by being angry, but by being present. You turned a painful moment into a door for others to walk through. You didn't build a movement. You built a front porch where people could meet and grow. That's enough. That's always been enough. He closed the notebook, smiled, and for the first time, allowed himself to believe that the story wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone it had touched. Part 10. The House We Built. It had been 18 months since that day, since sirens on his street, since sitting on his own porch, hands in the air, explaining his humanity. Now, that same porch held birthday balloons tied to the railing. Marcus turned 36. The neighborhood showed up, not with news cameras or protest signs, but with gifts, food, laughter, and stories. Ava came down from D.C. Jason brought friends from college. Mrs. Lopez baked 2 trays of tamales. Jerome grilled ribs. Camille, the journalist, quietly slipped in, handed Marcus a book, and said, thank you for changing the way I tell stories. Kids ran through the yard, chalking the driveway with phrases like, we love you, Mr. Wright. This is our neighborhood. Still standing. It wasn't just a birthday. It was a homecoming. Marcus had started a small garden along the fence months ago. Tomatoes, basil, peppers. Now it was thriving. During the party, a little boy asked him, what made it grow so much? Marcus smiled. I gave it time and care. That's all anything really needs. Midweek, Marcus received another envelope. Inside, Mr. Wright. We are breaking ground on the new community center next spring. The city council voted unanimously to name it the Wright Community Center for Equity and Belonging. You may not have asked to lead, but your impact made it impossible to ignore. He read the letter 3 times, then sat quietly, grateful, humbled. Marcus was invited to speak at the local elementary school, this time not just for career day, but to cut the ribbon on the new community mural the kids had painted. The wall read, "Everyone belongs here." Underneath, a painted version of Marcus's porch, with all kinds of people standing on it. Old, young, every race, every background, and right in the center, a smiling man with a key in his hand. Camille convinced him to do one final interview for a documentary follow-up. This time they filmed on the porch. No dramatic lighting, just the golden hue of evening sun and the sounds of a neighborhood at peace. She asked, "When you look back, what do you see?" Marcus thought carefully, then said, "I see a man who just wanted to go home and ended up helping others find theirs." That evening, Marcus walked the block. No fear, no eyes tracking him, just nods, smiles, familiar faces. He passed a white couple unloading groceries. They waved first. "Evening, Marcus," he waved back. "Evening. You need a hand?" At home, he opened Jason's leather-bound notebook and wrote, "The door was never the threat. The silence was. I opened that door not just with a key, but with everything I was taught to hide. And in doing so, I found more than justice. I found community. I found legacy. I found my place. And I built it into something no one can take away." Years later, a young woman stands on the steps of her first home. She's black, proud, holding her own set of keys. As she opens the door, a neighbor waves from across the street. "You just move in?" She nods. "Yeah, first house." He smiles. "Well, welcome home. You picked a good street." And on her bookshelf, a framed quote, "We live here, not just in buildings, but in each other." Wright.